Prime Minister Mark Carney is defending Canada's stance on recognizing Palestinian statehood after Donald Trump warns it could hurt trade talks. And we're going to dive right into this with our City Talks political panel. Joining me is Jeff Rutledge and Marion Nader via Zoom from Montreal. And Jeff, let's begin with you.
Absolutely.
Is it possible Trump will be even more challenging to deal with when it comes to trade talks? Is that possible?
Absolutely. I think what we're seeing play out is kind of a continuation. Certainly we saw it from the ambassador in recent comments, but a continuation of this perspective that really how the trade talks are playing out is very much personality-based. Mm-hmm. And so the issue and significant challenge for Prime Minister Carney and for Canadians generally, for the Canadian government generally, is to ensure that they're managing that appropriately, because we do need a deal at the end of the day. And as much as we look to diversify, there is no real way in which we can detach the success of our economy from the success of the U.S.
But Marion, is it possible that Carney is using this as an opportunity to forge deeper alliances with other countries? Because I believe we also need to do that and not just rely on the U.S.
100%. And I think it's a smart strategic move because we've actually been over-dependent on the U.S., not only sort of as the big brother, but also, for our security and economy. So I think it's in a way a little bit of a blessing that this has happened. So it just forces the government to go and seek out those new trade relationships, diversify our economy, and really more stand up to the bully in the room. So I think, the Prime Minister is doing a good job. It's going to take a lot of political will and thick skin to be able to push through, because Trump is just such an overwhelmingly unpredictable type of person and president. So as Jeff had said, yes, this is definitely personality based, but I think the Prime Minister has the leadership and the measurement to take it on.
A very key difference here, though, is Britain, France, Portugal. They already have new signed deals with Trump. Canada does not. So is it putting us in a more precarious position?
Well, I think the decision itself to recognize Palestinian statehood, is a rather divisive issue. Obviously, we're seeing that play out, and there's no confusion about that. And I think that, when it comes to the U.S. and their position on Israel, we're seeing Benjamin Netanyahu attending the White House coming up shortly. Their proximity is very clear. And the U.S. government has been very clear about the repercussions of this sort of decision. And so I don't think that they are being too cute by half about this. I think there will be implications to this decision. And I think, as you pointed out, the other countries that were signatories to this statement already have their deals done. And so there's a lot less at risk for them in this situation. And I also think that, perhaps Prime Minister Carney is being a little less clear, and there's a little bit more muddy in terms of what this decision means and all of the caveats that are associated with it. I think, most problematically, though, I will say is Hamas's recognition of the value of this statement for them in terms of the outcomes of October 7th.
And we will be talking about this for a very long time to come, I am sure. Let's turn to the United Nations. Donald Trump at the United Nations yesterday, no teleprompter, so he proceeded to speak for almost an hour, which is virtually unprecedented. Marion, what stands out most in your mind about what Trump had to say, and particularly how this impacts the world order?
To be honest, you just have to take a deep sigh and just, let him say what he's going to say and move on. It's just hard to take this man seriously. His blithering just continued on, whether it's at the White House or at the United Nations. So I think it was, an abomination and a complete disrespect, at the United Nations. And he's just continuing his bullying, and especially, what he said about Palestine. He doesn't clearly care about the collective innocence of Israelis and Palestinians who were dying. And so I think it's important that it was recognized. Good for Canada for recognizing them. But I think it's because there's a humanitarian and a hostage crisis that needs to be addressed. But I think besides that, I think at the United Nations, he clearly doesn't get it. He thinks he can get whatever he wants, whenever he wants, how he wants it. And I think it's just really important for the countries to stand together, because that's where unity comes, that's where strength comes, and that's how you defeat a bully.
And Jeff, it does appear that the president is pretty much able to call his own shots and get what he wants. What stands out from in your mind from yesterday?
Well, I mean, it was a rather bombastic speech, of course, but I think it does speak to, and to what Marion has referenced there, is his lack of respect for the institution of the UN, which, in fairness, I think points to the fragility of the international order at the moment, right? His ability to stand before the number of nations that sit at the UN and highly criticize them, I think is reflective of how he is approaching any sort of sense of order in the world at the moment. I myself can be highly critical of the UN and its ability to achieve outcomes and its ability to focus on priorities that really matter to many nations around the world. But, there are different ways of doing that. And I think that people are, expecting that from Trump every time he comes to the mic. One
final note we should talk about. Donald Trump seems to be reversing his stance on Ukraine. Marion.
So the thing is, I'm glad that the prime minister did come up, and talk about what they're going to do to help, get children safe back to their families who've been kidnapped. I think, again, there is a need for humanitarian action and accountability, but talk is just not going to do it. If there's no teeth attached to it. So I'm glad if, there was a change of tune a little bit, but let's see how far that goes, because at the end of the day, the coalition needs to come together and to ensure that, children are not being ripped away from their parents.
Okay, and Jeff, he's also suggesting that Ukraine can reclaim the land that Russia has taken over.
Yeah, well, I think this is kind of reflective of this idea that whoever speaks last in Trump's ear is likely to be the first on his mind when he speaks next about an issue. I suspect that Volodymyr Zelensky's comments to the president, have helped to embolden his position on this. But I do think it is an important shift. I'm just hoping that he can hold this position. As Volodymyr Zelensky said this morning at the UN, the only thing that wins these sorts of conflicts is friends and weapons. And so he knows that he's reliant on the U.S. to be able to achieve any sort of military outcome here, but also reliant on the rest of the NATO nations to stand up and stop supporting Russia through purchasing of oil products, et cetera.
But to your point, the president does seem to change his mind.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us for our latest City Talks panel. We'll see you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.